Good afternoon, everyone. We are the business formerly known as record companies panel, and we're here to hopefully share some lively and interesting conversation with you. My name is Amaechi Uzoigwe. I'm the head of content and business affairs at Official FM, which is an online platform offering smart and simple solutions for digital promotion. And I'm going to introduce our panel briefly, and then we're going to get going into the conversation. We have with us today, we have Bryan. To my immediate left, Stephen is the Executive Vice President for Digital Strategy and Business Development and Recorded Music with Warner Music Group. Stephen is responsible for overseeing WMG's worldwide digital strategy, forming new business models, and building strategic relationships with emerging and established players. We have Charles Caldas sitting next to Stephen. Charles is the CEO of Merlin. And Charles brings extensive experience in the music and digital media industries. Charles launched Merlin in 2007 to represent a commercially significant collective of music rights outside those held by major labels. Merlin's mandate is to help member companies ensure that they're equipped to compete in the ever-changing world of emerging technology and distribution in the healthiest, fairest, and strongest manner possible. We have Benjy Grinberg. Benjy is the founder and president of Rostrum Records, home to great artists such as Wiz Khalifa and Mac Miller. Benjy founded Rostrum in 2003. Other artists on the label include Valley, Denora, and Teammate. Not a bad accomplishment for starting a label from your bedroom, by the way. Benjy was also once L.A. Reid's assistant, so I'm sure he's got a lot of great stories. And in less than a decade, Rostrum has grown into a very successful independent label, and Benjy manages various arms of the operation, including artist development, sales, social media, and touring. With us, we have Brett Gurewitz, a visionary musician and businessman. Brett has guided the sound and ethos of punk rock out of the underground and into the forefront of modern culture. A founding member of the legendary SoCal band Bad Religion, and the founder of independent powerhouse Epitaph Records and Anti. Brett has also created a sustainable artist-first model that was prophetic 30 years ago and remains suited for today's ever-evolving music landscape. We have Dennis Kooker with us, President of Global Digital Business and U.S. Sales for Sony Music Entertainment. Dennis leads the company's worldwide digital strategy and activities, as well as its U.S. sales and distribution division. He also oversees SME's direct-to-consumer business and independent distribution company Red, while representing the company on the boards of numerous companies operating in the digital space. We also have with us Martin Mills, a man who needs no introduction. Martin set up Beggars Banquet in 1974 as a record store, and it's grown into the Beggars Group with flagship labels 4AD, Matador, Rough Trade, and XL. Martin runs one of the largest independent music groups in the UK with offices in major markets and has been actively involved in promoting the interests of the independent sector via his role in establishing the Association of Independent Music in the UK, Impala in continental Europe, A2IM in the US, the Worldwide Independent Network, and Merlin. We have with us Patrick Moxey, President, CEO, and owner of Ultra Music, another true visionary, starting with the early days helming Payday Records and Empire Management to his more recent success with Ultra. Patrick has been instrumental in bringing electronic dance music into the American mainstream, topping the charts with such tracks from Calvin Harris's collaboration with Rihanna, David Guetta, Yolanda Be Cool, Edward Maya, and more. And Patrick has also helped propel electronic dance music from the underground to the forefront of American music buyers, clubgoers, and radio listeners. And finally, with us, we have John Vanhala. John is the SVP of Digital and New Business for Island Def Jam, Motown, Universal Republic. John creates breakthrough digital and emerging business programs for UMG's New York label group for 220-plus recording artists and 17-plus labels, from Justin Bieber to Rihanna, Nicki Minaj, Kanye West, Drake, and more. John is most excited about how innovations in digital, social, mobile, and new product development create new value for artists, labels, brands, and beyond. Thank you. So let's jump into it. We used to call them record companies, but that description is an anachronism today. Records are becoming less of what a label does. Monetizing music and finding new streams to exploit has become the primary goal. Music labels have always been venture capitalists investing in artists and music. Historical ways labels have found return on investment have been through the sales of recordings. And while that's still the biggest revenue center for most artists, how do each of you see the function of a label expanding into something more than a record company? Martin, why don't we start with you?
Well, I guess I'm the old-fashioned wing here. We don't do 360-degree deals. We just believe that our expertise is in selling recorded music. Obviously, selling recorded music is different now than it was a while back. There's lots more monetization and lots of different areas. But fundamentally, what we still do is we deliver a service to our artists which exploits their recorded music. And that's what we believe it should be for a company like us. I think if you're a lot smaller than us or a lot bigger than us, it maybe looks different. But from where we are, every year we ask ourselves the same question, should we be broadening what we do? And every year the answer is no.
What about you?
Can you express the question again?
Of course.
Just it's
new ways as record companies, as the landscape and the ecosystem changes. In record companies, they're not record labels anymore as much as they are music companies. How have you seen Epitaph adapt?
Well, I think what's happened is that there's the road to distribution has been democratized. So it's very easy for anyone to put music out there. Our role today really is as an artist advocate and a service provider. Sorry, I'm not used to doing these things. I get very nervous and my voice shakes. So give me a second. I'll acclimate. I really feel that nobody really achieves great success alone. The greatest Olympic athlete has a team of people behind them, right? And in that sense, we've learned to be that team behind a great artist.
I think that's an important point because there's a lot of talk about DIY and disintermediation, and I think that what a lot of us have seen and learned is that it does take a team, and that you can have an artist with your own record label, but you still need some kind of a team to get from point A to point B and ultimately to point Z. So you guys develop and nurture artists and help build exposure and invest in the growing in the artist audience and fan base. You create that attention for the artists that we're talking about. What ways can you envision monetizing this attention in the future? You know, streaming, advertising, YouTube, Vivo, other. Patrick, why don't you speak to that one?
Well, I think it's with a sense of great relief. We can say that we've shed the idea of the record company and gotten back to the music company, you know, and it's a sense of being much closer now with the producers and the artists and the brand. And, you know, then once you're kind of ally yourself with the brand of the music that you're working with, it's that much easier to monetize in any number of different ways. Certainly, we've had a lot of success with YouTube, with Ultra's YouTube channel. We have over 100 million views a month. We're at 1.8 billion views in total, number 6 amongst musicians at YouTube. At first, we were getting about 50 cents for the traffic, but now it's turned into a 7-figure income source. We're sharing it with our artists. I'm very proud to say we were accounting to our artists very early on for this income, you know, talking 3.5 years ago when it first started. We were processing all the data onto everybody's statements and getting it sorted out. And we took a very aggressive role, uploading videos and marketing them online. And, you know, that's one example of, you know, kind of a new way to get income in the business.
Absolutely. Stephen, your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I think that one thing that we've definitely seen is if you look back in the industry, I think we had essentially one product that we were focused on monetizing. I think with technology, the emergence of technology, the consumer has much more available to them. They have a lot more options, the ability to create more targeted offerings that appeal to a different type of music experience, a different music consumer. There's a lot more opportunity around that. So we're very focused on creating models that are really targeting those different and varying consumer experiences and trying to maximize the value out of each type of music consumer, which I think is a very different skill set than the previous business, which was primarily focused on driving the acquisition of one product. We now have a very diverse, in the digital space, very diverse set of products and services that combined are driving significant revenue for us.
And the role of advertising, of course, can't be understated in this conversation as well. Do you see that growing in the future even more in terms of the revenues thrown off to the master rights holders or the record labels?
We do think that advertising is significant and will continue to grow, and we've also seen very positive signs coming out of partners like YouTube. However, we also feel really strongly that advertising services, ad-based services that are free to the consumer, we view them primarily as customer acquisition vehicles. So we want to make sure that we're using those services to draw in a mass audience and then figure out ways that we can move that audience up into more premium products, whether that's a download sale, whether that's a subscription. We think it's critical that we not wholly rely on advertising revenues, but that we use them as a monetized means of acquiring customers that we can drive up to more premium products and services.
Okay, that's a good thing to point out for sure in terms of your strategy. So you talked about the one product historically that the industry has sold, and the different configurations. It's an album, cassette, CD in these physical configurations. And then the download emerged. And until the download, music products were additive to the business, but the conversion of album sales into track sales has reduced revenue substantially. How will streams become additive, or will they? Dennis, I'd love you to address that one.
Sure. Well, I guess one thing to start with is, I don't know that it was the introduction of the track that caused the revenue to decline. I think that there were a lot of factors in early 2000s that led to the changes that we've seen in this business.
Do you want to maybe point out a couple of
Well, I think obviously the internet brought piracy on a mass scale, and that mass scale of piracy had an enormous impact on our business. And probably had the most negative impact on our business overall. So while technology is an enabler, it also can bring with it problems, and those were the problems that we had to work through. I think what's exciting is that we see the business now changing and the landscape changing, that there are more and more options for consumers, including streaming services, and with that is bringing consumers back into services where the artists and the record companies are being paid again. And from that standpoint, we look at it and look at the business overall, and it looks very additive to the business. And the more channels that we can develop where consumers are enjoying music in an experience where everyone who should be paid is getting paid is overall a much better situation for our business.
So what's your prognosis for Spotify, for example? We've seen a lot of back and forth and pros and cons with that service. I'm not taking a position. I'm just asking for your opinion on the growth potential for that, and if you think there are other streaming services that may emerge.
Well, I think to be fair, I don't know that we should focus on any one service. I think that the idea of streaming and subscription type models are models that are only in their beginning and will continue well into the future. There's an opportunity for us to continue to grow those type of services. What is great to see is that there are a lot of players in this market, and there's still more coming in. And to me, that shows, again, that there's a lot of excitement out there in the investment community about music and about investing in music.
Thanks. The ringtone, as our friend Tom Silverman likes to point out, the ringtone was a product that had the highest consumer value perception of any musical product in history. $2.99 for 30 seconds of one song tethered to a cell phone. Are there any new music products on the horizon that can drive more revenues to the business? John?
That's an interesting frame-up. I mean, I believe that as an industry move towards more access models, I do believe that grows the size of the pie for everybody in this room, for all the artists and for the business partners that are around it. So I don't know, and I may break it down into ownership, oversimplified, but ownership versus access models today. Ringtone being an ownership model, and I wouldn't disagree with how Tom may have characterized that. But I think as we grow into more access models, that the size of the revenue pie grows for all. And to echo a few of my colleagues, there's more options for artists today than ever. There's more options for consumers today than ever. So it's incumbent upon those of us in the business to raise our service level and to make sure in that order, I believe, from a label perspective, that we're driving value for artists and really for consumers first, and we'll all win if we do that right.
Right. And because there's so many new services and that are available, how is somebody to choose? How are they supposed to identify which one is superior or optimal for them?
That's a wonderful question. If I had that answer, absolutely, I'd probably start a service. Differentiation between them, and I agree that it's not about a particular single service. I think, you mentioned one of them, but there's others that have been in the market for much longer, and they're doing well. So I think a big challenge for all of us in the industry is to get people to try. Get them to try new models and raise awareness of the opportunity. I use a phrase that there's more consumers of music now than when we all sat down on these lovely white couches. There's more consumers of music today or this second than there have ever been in the history of the planet. So it's how we bring those, and by the way, they're not necessarily all revenue participants in the ecosystem, but they're consuming, enjoying, and living their lives with music. So as we move those people into models that are relatively frictionless for them, again, I believe artists, songwriters, labels, and others win, and all business partners as well.
Thank you. And Benjy, as someone who's at the forefront of pushing, new artists who've achieved some really great success, are there any specific products or strategies that you guys have used that you've seen have triggered some real growth or activity, whether it's fan engagement or sales?
Well, because we also manage all of our artists, we look at things just a little bit differently. It's not just about sales; it's about awareness of the artist, on a whole. So things like Spotify or Rhapsody, or anytime we can reach somebody and they can listen to the music and fall in love with the artist and get involved and feel like a part of it, and through a service like Spotify, they can also share it with their friends and go through Facebook, and then it starts a whole wave of things. That's all great for us, because it helps with touring. It helps across the board. So our main perspective is we just want people to know about our artists. We want them to listen to the music. We want the music to be accessible, and we want it to be as easy as possible for people to hear it and fall in love with it and share it. So anything, any product, any service that does that, we're fans of. And hopefully, monetarily in the long run, we'll all work together so that it works out for everyone. I don't think the balance has been found yet. The fee that an artist gets per stream, maybe that maybe that'll move around a little bit so that it makes more sense. But for right now, looking at it holistically, it's we love those sorts of things.
I think you made a good point. We are still in the early stages of this new ecosystem and the development of this, and seeing how these things all come together, and how the traditional industry, which is still the vast majority of the revenue that's created, how they're able to work together effectively so we can move forward in a way that benefits the rights holders and the fans and the artists and everyone who's a part of the equation.
And not to plug your own product, but we use official.fm for all of our mixtapes now and everything, and we use it not because
it was not a setup question.
I swear this is not. But it goes along with the point that it's very easy, and it's easy to share, and it's easy to send around, and it's easy to to involve people with it. And those are the sorts of things that we seek out. And when we find something like that, we'll use it over and over again, and it's very effective. And so we love things like that.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to move the conversation along into another very, very important aspect of what music companies are dealing with and struggling with today, and that's licensing, which is a very big speed bump in keeping more investors out of music-based products. So one thing I think, one quest of the industry is to find a way to make the access to licensing music for all sorts of uses to become much more frictionless, and creating a single point of clearance for master and mechanical licenses to further reduce those frictions. YouTube has put a burden on publishers to sign off on the UGC in order for them to sell it as a premium product. But there are millions of dollars on the table, being left on the table because of these licensing issues. Is there a better way? Charles, I would love for you to speak to that issue.
I mean, I think one of the exciting things at the moment is that the availability of a consumer to your music is easier than it's ever been. Your broad is global, your reach is global, your potential audience is global. But we're all in here trying to turn this into a business, and one of the challenges, when we operate globally, that we see is how do these new businesses and these new investors come into the market and provide the consumer with the most compelling product possible. I think, I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that what we're trying to do now, I think collectively as an industry, is make it easier, more convenient, more cost-effective, and more attractive than it's ever been for people to legitimately consume music without having to steal it. And I think, we might be early on in the path, but it feels like there's incremental value coming into the business.
Right.
One of the challenges, and one of the things that Merlin was set up to do is to reduce that friction. If you're looking at a digital music service trying to launch across continental Europe and the USA, for example, just to get to the labels that we would represent would take about 290 individual transactions from the US to Germany to Spain to France to the UK. Right. And what we did in putting Merlin together is remove that friction and make it a single point of contact for all of this repertoire on a global basis. And I think those kind of challenges on the publishing side haven't yet been met with a level of efficiency that we're doing it.
Right.
And it feels like it's one of the factors that holds back innovation and investment, because if it's hard to get to market and it's hard to get consumers, and one of the things that we firmly believe is the services that succeed offer the consumer everything. If you want somebody to put their hand in their pocket and pull out $10 and pay you $10 every month, you better be sure you're giving them every piece of music that they want. Otherwise, they'll stop paying for it. Right. And that in itself is a huge challenge for everyone, I think.
Right. And so what should, say, people in the audience have their own record labels, or they're artists who are selling music all over the world, for example. They don't have the weight of some of the majors or the bigger players to extract their, or to make sure they're receiving their revenues. That's one of the huge benefits that Merlin offers, is a way to get your money. So what should they know, say an up-and-coming label or artist, what should they know about the global territory when it comes to master rights and revenue that will help them get a better understanding of how to approach it?
I think the key thing to consider about this is to take that desire we all have to have as many people listen to our music as possible and work out how do we turn that into a living and how do we make that sustainable.
Right.
Build a digital infrastructure and strategy within your business that actually allows you to take advantage of these opportunities. Otherwise, you will be marginalized.
Right.
And I think that getting your digital house into order as early as possible in the development of your label is becoming much more important to building a sustainable business.
Yeah, excellent point. And Patrick is someone who's a master rights holder and a publisher. How do you see this new licensing terrain, and how are you navigating that?
I have 3 people doing licensing at the office, and I tell them, try to respond to everything within 24 hours. And it actually has helped us get a lot of, obviously, film, TV, and video game uses and things like that. But we have the same attitude towards new music services. We try to engage, we try to do deals. We just keep them short term. Like, we'll do 1-year deal. Like, try to get a feel of what's going on, but try to keep the transactional nature of it going so we can see where it's heading. Things are so splintered. If you're starting a new technology music service, if you go out to get the rights, I think it's almost impossible. It's almost like you have to start as a pirate and then get more legitimate. I mean, even people like Google are kind of coming in from the cold, and they couldn't be any more official. So it's a constantly evolving thing with a lot of shades of gray. But I think it's better to kind of engage and try to do deals short term and get things licensed and up and running You know, but there's always something new, you know, like SoundCloud. We're thinking a lot about SoundCloud. You know, right now they're not really monetizing their site, but, you know, they're already at 15 million plays a day, you know, and that's zooming up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what do you think about, I mean, for artists and labels, or, you know, artists you work for? One thing I saw, I had a record label for 10 years called Definitive Jux, and we would find out that we had money owed to us in this territory or that territory or some other territory, and you just don't know. And like you said, it's so complex or so difficult to try and get that money. I mean, I think that's one of the frictionless points we're trying to get to, as well as education. And I think that's a huge part of it as well, making sure that the master rights holders, the publishers, are fully educated on the legalities or just the nuances of these different frameworks. So definitely do your homework. Finding rights and confirming ownership of rights is another challenge. Publishers and performing rights organizations are working on a global rights database for publishing. Is there a need for something like that for master rights? Martin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in an ideal world we'd have done that 10 or 15 years ago. And I think we are dramatically hindered as an industry by not having a single global recorded rights database. The problem is that the way we deal with this is extremely fragmented, both within individual companies and within performance rights organizations. And it seems to me that it's a no-brainer that in the modern world, we should have a single source of data for the world, we should have a single distribution for the world, and we should have local licensing. And until we get there, we won't make it easy, we won't make it cheap, but we have to do it.
Right. Okay. Benjy, you had a #1 album without any radio play, or with very little traditional commercial radio play. How did that change the game and for you guys, and what are the Mac Miller ramifications on the industry when something like that happens?
I think as Steam was building up for the release of that album, we realized something really special was going on. When we finished the album, I knew it was a special album, and I knew I had a special artist that I was working with. But as it got closer and closer to release, and it was getting bigger and bigger, and then it ended up being a #1 record, I think, hopefully, you know, because I was in the middle of the storm, so to speak, I can't necessarily say what everyone's perspective on it was, or, you know, be so, you know, vain to think everyone had a perspective on it.
Right.
But to me, I think it proved that you can have successful albums, you can have a #1 album without what people considered the traditional ways of doing that, having, you know, a huge song on the radio, you know, doing all of those sort of very mainstream, typical ways of reaching that audience. And we were reaching Mac's audience in different ways, and ways that didn't cost much money, ways that were very organic, ways that were very natural, you know, touring, YouTube, like things that, you know, we were just doing. We didn't have money to do a, you know, across the board radio campaign. You know, we didn't have that sort of infrastructure to support that. So we did what we could, and the audience found him, and he found his audience, and I think it showed that, you know, through social networking, through touring, through all those very intimate ways, you know, now intimate ways of reaching your fans, they responded, they connected, and then they wanted to support, and you know, it was interesting. I mean, we're still sort of looking back and, you know, seeing, you know, looking at different aspects of it and seeing, you know, what worked and what didn't, and you know, next go around, the next Mac Miller album, you know, do it the same but bigger.
And I think an interesting part of whether it's Mac Miller or Khalifa or a lot of artists who are younger and who are speaking to the generation of digitally native, that audience, I think radio is less important for a lot of those acts, because social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or whatever, that's their radio anyway, so they're not really listening, even though radio still, I believe, is 90% of music discovery or some insane number like that. Hoodie Allen debuted at #10 on the album chart without a label. Why do artists even need labels? Brett?
Well, they don't really need labels, I guess.
You're an artist and you
Yeah,
started your
I'm
own.
an artist and a label. And it gets back to, I guess, what I said in the first place, which is nobody can really achieve real success alone. And even the guys who get to number one without a label have a team of people around them. The thing is, as a music label today, what we try to do is provide cutting-edge marketing capabilities with expertise and experience. And really, I feel like I'm not competing with Martin, and I'm not competing with Benjy here. I'm competing with management firms. Well, you are one, but marketing firms and management firms. And artists today can go out and say, I don't want a label. I'm going to hire a press person and a radio plugger and a digital strategy consultant. And I'm going to sew this team together and go do it myself and hire a record producer, But the thing is, you've got sort of these disparate parties, and they might all have expertise, but I feel, as a label, Benjy here is a guy who can probably, for one or two artists, do almost all those areas himself and do it with passion, and the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, My goal and my job as a label at Epitaph and Anti is to put together the best team possible, provide them with the best, most modern tools, collaboration tools and marketing tools, and give them resources. And then say to the artists, yes, you could assemble your own team, but you can come here, you have a single point of entry, and we are all coordinated. We're greater than the sum of our parts. This is a positive sum game for you because we're all passionate, we have experience, we have expertise, we have the tools, and we're coordinated on your behalf. So it's about doing better artist advocacy. I also want to point something out too, because we're all talking very much about the technical facets and the ecosystems and diminishing friction, which is super fun stuff. But it's all meaningless without A&R, So our job as a record company is to identify marketing opportunities and eliminate obstacles for artists. And the way that we connect with our artists through A&R is very important. Sometimes they find us, sometimes we find them, but that's really where it all starts.
I think that's an excellent point. It's something that I've certainly said a lot on panels and in conversation, is that it begins and ends with the music. The A&R, finding music that people want, that people like, that they're going to consume. So many young artists I see spending a lot of time with social media or this, and there's a lot out there, and it can get really confusing, and it can suck up a lot of your time. And I don't think the time spent in the studios, maybe, crafting that next great song is maybe as much as it should, my personal opinion.
Can I interject for a second? I think underlying this whole thing, though, in mentioning Hoodie Allen and even Mac Miller's, the label is still important, the infrastructure is still important, the guidance is still important. But one thing to point out is that the artist, I believe, is more powerful than ever. Right. And at the core of it is the artist. And there are many things these days you can't do without the artist, that the label can't do without the artist. Great point. And it's like, if you want to reach, Wiz Khalifa's 6.5 million Twitter followers, I can't do it. And I manage him and worked with him for 8 or 9 years. I don't have the password. He has it. Only he has it, and that's why he has 6.5 million Twitter followers. Because I'm not on there like, hey guys, check out Wiz's. It's him saying whatever's on his mind, and that's what they're connecting to, and so the power is with the artist. But to Brett's point, the infrastructure, the guidance, the team, all of that is still very important. Whether you have a label or your own team that you've assembled, maybe you're not calling it a label, but I'm sure that Hoodie Allen has people around him that are helping him do it, and maybe they haven't, created an LLC yet or anything, but they're a company of sorts, and it still takes a team to make it happen. Absolutely.
And Martin, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, as someone who's built up quite an empire of record labels. How you see?
Yeah, I pretty much concur with Brett and with Benjy. I think whether you call it a record label or not, artists are still going to need the services that a record label currently provides in the future. I think the two differences that record labels do provide is, number one, and kind of obviously, they provide investment. I mean, what the alternative ways that you were describing of doing it basically mean that you're paying for it yourself or you're raising investment from third-party sources. A label is an investor, and whether it's investing in advance or in recording costs or in marketing or in production, whatever it is, that's a significant difference. I think the other thing, and this applies really to independent labels rather than major labels, is that labels provide framing. I think if an artist signs to Anti, then that says something about the artist. If the artist signs to Matador, that says something about the artist. And it gives that artist a flying start, if you like, at finding an audience. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So let's speak a little globally now. With geopolitical borders are breaking down, YouTube is international. iTunes is in 37 countries now, Spotify in 15. Amazon, Deezer, and many more expect to roll out globally soon. So music can be exposed, accessed, acquired, and monetized beyond traditional markets. What does this mean for record labels? I'd love Stephen first, and then Dennis to speak to that.
Sure, we absolutely believe that technology is going to enable us to reach new consumers, not only in developed markets like the US, but particularly in emerging markets. We think the penetration of broadband, the penetration of the smartphone market, in combination with some of these new services, is going to enable us to reach into consumer markets that we haven't been able to monetize in the past. I think in the US, for example, I think Cricket is a great example of a service, a fantastic service that leveraged the distribution of Cricket, which is a prepaid phone carrier in the US, to monetize a market in the US that we essentially think was unmonetized until that service was made available. We think that we're going to be able to follow that sort of business model, taking great services, bundling them in potentially with ISP access, with mobile access, in order to reach consumers in markets where we have payment challenges, where we have high levels of piracy, in a way that we've never been able to do before. So we're very optimistic that new technology is going to give us an opportunity to significantly broaden our reach of monetization among new consumers.
Great. And do you see that change happening quickly, or do you see it being more of a slow walk to the future?
I think that the big gating factor really is the technology, sort of the fundamental technology when it's there. But I would say we see enormous energy. I was in Barcelona earlier this year at the Mobile Congress in Barcelona. The level of energy around the world in models like the Cricket model, we're seeing carriers essentially in every region, every market, looking at music as a very strategic opportunity for them. Very interested in pursuing a model where their consumer has access to a fantastic service like a Cricket service or a Deezer. So there's some gating factors there in terms of when the technology in those markets will reach a point where that can become a mass market opportunity. But we do think that we're reaching a turning point where it's going to become a mass scale opportunity. And we have enough services out there with fantastic platforms that are very focused on some of those markets. So we think that it could happen, in the near future.
Okay. And Dennis, you've got quite a global footprint with your experience and portfolio. What do you think?
Well, I think that our business historically was one in the physical world that distribution was really structured locally. It was country by country, and what we're seeing is our business is at least multi-territory, if not global now, as it continues to grow and evolve. In some ways, what that does is it really does open up the world into what Stephen's talking about. Countries where we couldn't afford to have distribution operations, suddenly there are big opportunities for us from a business standpoint. But it also means that we've got to take a very, very different approach with how we look at the market. So while we're global, still local is incredibly, incredibly important, especially from a creative standpoint. Business in most countries around the world is still primarily local language in the country of origin, and you can't miss that. But what's great about it is in every country in the world, there's an opportunity for you to get distribution very quickly in any other country in the world, and that wasn't always the case. So there aren't as many boundaries now, and that's very, very exciting for our artists. It's very exciting from a business standpoint. And, the technology, again, the piece of the enablement is, looking at what we're able to do with mobile phones and with smartphones around the world. And suddenly it's opening up markets where, again, I think John was talking earlier about the consumption of music. It's at an all-time high because everyone can get at it. Everyone can get at it no matter what country you're in the world. You know, mobile phone penetration is as high as it ever has been, and it's still growing. And so there's enormous opportunities for us to continue to grow our business on a global basis in markets where we may not have had much business in the past.
I think the mobile point is an excellent one because we've seen the explosion of phones for sure, but the pads are the next thing, and they're going to be everywhere. And as someone who's lived for quite a while in Africa and other places, it's something that people they don't have laptops. They're not going to be at home with the desktop. They're going to have a phone or a pad, and this is the way they're going to access the music. John, I'd love you to speak to this as well because I know you're deeply involved in some of these aspects.
Yeah, I think it's crazy exciting right now, actually, what's going on globally. And while I work at the label level for UMG's New York label group, what you may be familiar with is this term, the rep owner, or the label that signed an artist, represents them globally and works with our business units across the planet. So, you know, we've all alluded to certain things, but in markets where there is no download store, in markets where there is no online streaming service, through mobile and through even feature phones, we've got opportunity now to provide that which fans/consumers want. They want music. They're hungry for it. It could even come in the form of an IVR line, which doesn't sound very technologically advanced here, but in perhaps certain, different countries, that's what you've got. And people are used to doing that. And we're giving people, consumers, fans, sort of what they want in a device they already own in a way they want it. And I think that's a big part, that just overarching philosophy is a big part of how we grow this business together, all of us. When you and I were speaking, if you're at a W hotel, press 0 in somebody's room and they answer, welcome to whatever, whenever. It's a really cool phrase. I think that's what our fans want, and they want it to feel frictionless. And how we deal with that in emerging markets is exciting because I love our existing channels here and in the bigger territories, but we have a chance to experiment with telco operators, with new models, working with our what everyone perceive as competitors in order to build businesses together that work in a local territory where literally no music revenue was being generated at all. And it's great for the local repertoire, the local creators of music. It's also great for the global repertoire and global creators of music that are coming into that market from elsewhere.
I think that's also a great point with emerging markets. And, we get so focused on our music and wanting to sell our music elsewhere. But I think it's important to point out that there are way more people outside of America than there are here, and they generally want to listen to their music. So I think as we saw in France in the 90s when the government mandated that 60% of the music played on radio in France has to be French, their recorded music business took off because they were consuming and they were making music for themselves. They weren't just buying the latest American track or the latest thing from the UK, and I think we're starting to see that globally. They want to consume their own artists in addition to the music that we're providing.
Amaechi,
please.
I just want to add that in addition to global access, which you can have now with the music, we found that promotion is still critical because there's so many millions of tracks being dumped in all over the world. It's like white noise. Right. So we use independent promoters in Australia, in the UK, in Montreal, Toronto, and then we have our US people. But, it's very important, we find, to have actual promotion that we're directing and controlling from New York happening in these countries to separate our tracks from the local repertoire and the noise of the repertoire. Right. And I know, like in Quebec, I've got to have my guy Richard Lafrance talking to C'est Quoi and whatever other radios in French, because if you go, there's no other way it's going to happen.
That's a good point. Just being really strategic about your approach, and it could be California is different from New York, and London is different from Tokyo, and all the way in between. Okay, so I'm gonna move this along a little bit. We've seen the 10-year decline in the old record business and the turnaround of the newly reinvented music business. We've seen a new ecosystem being born and develop. Why are each of you bullish right now on the music business? I'd love for you to talk about your vision for the next 10 years briefly. It's a long time. Whether it's discovery, exposure, how are people going to be? We touched about it just a minute ago, but hearing and enjoying this music, and how is it going to generate revenues? But feel free to just give your own take on the future of the business and how you see your own company fitting into that. Let's start with you, Stephen.
I think the future is bright. I think that, and maybe going back to a couple of the questions that we talked about here, we don't see the distinction being as distinct as streaming versus download. The overall sort of macro view that we have is that technology and what technology enables is going to make a music experience that's so convenient for the consumer that far more of them are going to start paying for music. I think it's been said a couple of times, we do see consumption at an all-time high, although monetization of that consumer has continued to decline. So our overall goal with all these new models is to restore that monetization. We're really focused
the tipping point for that? I'm sorry.
Well, we're focused in two key areas, and I think the distinction of streaming versus downloading we think is going to essentially go away. That the consumer experience around how you access your collection will essentially be the same, powered by cloud technology. So whether you're buying a track on iTunes or whether you're streaming a track through Spotify, that experience essentially across your suite of devices will be the same. It will be extremely convenient. And the distinction will be whether you're someone that wants to buy on an a la carte basis, or are you a customer that wants to pay a monthly fee and essentially have access to the whole music collection. But we think both of those models are going to increase in value as on the download side, we make it easier and easier for the consumer to experience their own collection and to add to that collection through essentially frictionless commerce. And I think the emergence of things like iCloud, what Amazon is planning to do, are going to make adding to your collection far more easier than it's been in the past. And then on the other side, for consumers that are willing to pay that monthly fee, you have a wide variety of services that provide a fantastic experience, social connectivity, which is going to, we believe, significantly increase the value of those consumers. So we think both of those things are equally important. We think the user experience is going to converge, and all of that will result in restoring a lot of the lost monetization that we've seen over the last few years.
Great. And Charles, and maybe touch specifically on master rights revenue in terms of Merlin and how you see that evolving.
Yeah, I mean, Merlin's been going since 2007, and I think we certainly feel that the ubiquity of music and the availability of music via new convenient ways of accessing it are the most exciting opportunity that's out there. I think the cricket example here in the US is a really creative, interesting example of how you get to a consumer that's not considered to be a high-value consumer, but not so much because I think the model was interesting. I think the more interesting thing there is the fact that a telecommunications provider, for the first time in a long time, put a significant amount of value on music within their business. And if you can look at what Telia have done in Sweden, what Orange have done in France, the investment from the telco side is really encouraging. And I think that the opportunity is definitely there to take that ubiquity and that access to music and turn it into increased revenues across the board. And present company accepted, people are lazy, and people will pay for convenience. And I think ultimately, if you can give people a really convenient, stress-free and comprehensive way of managing and having access to a music collection, whichever way it suits it, whether they want to be really lean forward and be really active or whether they just want to sit back and have music fed to them, is a landscape that's really, I think, open for exploitation.
Yeah, so I totally agree.
Yeah.
And Martin, if you could touch on that too, and also how you see new artists breaking in the future, as well as physical product, and where you see that going.
Well, I think we've been growing over the last 10 years anyway, and I suspect the same applies to my 3 independent colleagues here. So we haven't necessarily seen Doom individually in the last 10 years, but I'm pretty confident about where it can go. I think, as another panelist said, more and more people are listening to music every day. I think digital formats will clearly become more diverse and can be monetized more readily. I don't think physical retail is going away at all. I see independent record shops growing, so I'm confident there. I think there are considerable threats both internally and externally, and we need to be smart enough to avoid those. But I feel confident.
Great. And Brett, please speak to that as well, and how you see the role changing as well.
You know, I can't see the future, obviously, but I'm a real optimist. I think you have to be an optimist to be in our business. So those of us who are label owners up here and are definitely all optimists. I have an idea that, you know, the internet economy, this new digital economy, it's sort of, I think of it as a meta economy. And, I'm going to tell you a little metaphor that I've come up with to sort of visualize it. But when capitalism first started getting off the ground with the Industrial Revolution, you know, there were no rules. A lot of people got taken advantage of. There were robber barons. There were guys getting very rich and guys getting very poor. And it was just, it was the Wild West, right? And little by little, incrementally, infrastructure was put in, and it got fairer and fairer and fairer for the people who own private property, and also for the workers and for everyone involved in the ecosystem. Well, I believe that the digital economy, when it sprang upon us, was the same thing. It was a meta economy. It was an economy above the economy. And the people who regulated the regular economy were all these gray-haired gentlemen off in their offices who had no idea what was going on. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand it well enough to regulate it. And so what ended up happening is a couple companies who shall remain nameless got extremely rich on the backs of rights holders, and a lot of people got free stuff that didn't belong to them, so good for them. No harm, no foul. But I feel that little by little, that regulation is coming in, and that infrastructure is coming in, and the people who've gotten rich on the backs of right holders are seeing it happen, kicking and screaming, you know. But you know, those digital natives don't mind what's happening, and so what I feel like, whatever the shape or form of it will be, there'll be some balance between access and ownership. And it will be contingent on emerging technologies, and it's going to be wonderful. But I think what's going to happen is pretty soon, everybody's going to have a listening booth for every recorded song in history in their pocket. And they're going to be able to think about it, find it, and buy it, right? And the same thing's going to be, they're going to hear it on the radio and buy it. And when that happens, what we need to do as a record industry to be prepared is understand that we're rights management people now. We're more like publishers. Obviously, we have to have the same skill set we used to have. We have to be able to identify talent. We have to be able to give support and advocacy to talent. But we have to keep our digital house in order, as Martin was saying. It has to start with us. We have to learn how to do a transaction with a frictionless digital handshake, right? You know, and I believe that's happening. I keep saying it's 3 years away, but I've said that 3 times for the last 9 years. So I'm going to say in about 3 years that's going to be happening.
But the dialectic is underway at the very least. We are getting there. Who knows how long it will take, but at least it's going
But that's
forward.
the promised land when we get
right.
there.
Okay, great. So Benjy, please, and also talk about, I mean, you touched briefly on Khalifa, the example of his Twitter followers, and how he has the key to that, and the reason he has so many. Now, do you think in today's market, you know, do artists need different skill sets and attributes to succeed, like social media mastery? Could a Janis Joplin, could a Jimi Hendrix break today?
Well, I didn't know them personally,
Right.
so I don't know exactly. But yes, artists today are not just artists; they're business people, they're marketers. People like Mac and Wiz are some of the best marketing people
Right.
I know. They know about themselves. They know what their audience wants. They know how they want to relate to their audience. they're of the age group that their audience is.
Right.
They know how they consume music personally, and they know how to connect properly. So first and foremost, we as executives need to listen to our artists, which is something that I always am an advocate for. And more and more, like I was talking before, my vision for the future, I believe that the differences between independent and major labels will become fewer and fewer. Because of the ease of distribution, because of other factors, because of the internet, because of being able to reach people directly, not necessarily just by radio, but by other means, makes it easier and levels the playing field in certain ways. And not that there's not a role for major labels, there's a role for everyone, but the differences will become fewer. And I believe deals for the artists will become better. Because the artists have more and more power, I believe they'd be able to demand more and more, as they should. And I feel like the archaic record company contract with artists is really quite crazy.
Yeah.
And so I feel like all those things are going to change as everything else changes. And I think we're going to get to a more egalitarian system where things are a bit more even, and some of the old gatekeepers won't be the gatekeepers anymore. There will be new gatekeepers in a way.
Right.
But it's all about the fans now. It's all about the direct access. I don't when we're releasing a song, I don't think about, will this DJ like it? I'm like, will the fans like it?
Yeah.
That's all that matters. If he doesn't get it, the fans will, and the fans will call the radio. It's just about the fans. It's about the artists and the fans, and it's how we can help them communicate.
Right.
And the artist gets its message out. We hear what the fans are saying. That's all that matters. All the rest is extra.
I hear you. And Patrick, please weigh in on this too, and if you want to add something in terms of where you see electronic dance music going, which is, we've obviously seen a tremendous surge in that in the last few years, and how you see that impacting your future.
Ultra Music, we started in 1996, and we've been involved with live music and music publishing and recorded music and all aspects of music. 10 years of decline of recorded music, we managed to grow in each year, but it was now, there's been something so refreshing about that decline. It's made me really think about the brand of the artists who we're involved with, the totality of the music, of being able to add value in many different areas, but really adding value, not just grabbing at it, but making it happen in merch area, publishing area. And when I think about where we are now, we're in a great place. Certainly electronic music, the same radio stations I used to go to, and they'd say, dance music will never test, play nothing but dance music. Right. Every top 40 station in the country. The same, major video outlets that I used to go to, and they said, no way, we've done research, we've done surveys, dance music will never work. They're all playing all our videos.
Right.
And maybe they're playing them because our YouTube channel is getting 100 million views a month by itself. That probably helps. They can see that their viewers, they got to interact with us.
Right.
But what's most encouraging now is the sense of it's sharpened our wit and our resources, the whole change in recorded music, to be involved close to the music, close to the producers and artists, and it's given a whole new lease of life and energy onto everything. So right. I can see now the streaming numbers, which used to be non-existent, breaking 7 figures, things are happening, Spotify, a lot of great things are happening. So I feel very positive about the future and certainly what's happening with electronic music.
Right. And I think with all 4 of our label owners here, what you see is an incredible focus and concentration on quality music and a relationship to the fan base and that artist's relationship to the fan base. And I think that's a great lesson and an example in and of itself. So for Dennis, and John too, as a matter of fact, I'd love you to talk about the future of, as you see it, and where streaming fits in, the whole concept of one click, and the ease of engagement for fans, and is a way to impact both revenue and marketing.
Right. Well, I think, overall, I think that, 10 years from now, the one thing that I'm certain is it's going to look different than today. And how it evolves and who is successful is ultimately going to be the folks who are able to continue to make changes and react to what consumers are looking for and what is happening within the creative community. I think the idea of one click is very much in line with many of the things we've talked about today, and that is reducing the friction for consumers, making it easier for them to get access to what they're looking for, get it quickly, to have it across all devices, to not need to think about what they have to do to get it from one listening environment to another. And the more effective that we are as an industry, our retail partners are, in working with us, to create that environment, the greater success that we're going to have, and the quicker we're going to see that conversion of consumption to monetization.
Right. Great. Thank you. John?
I think there's a couple phases of one click. For fans, we adamantly want it to be easier than ever for our fans to access a commercial music service of whatever mechanic that takes the form of. The creators of music can actually be making a living, buying their wives and girlfriends and husbands clothing, going on vacations, etc. And the business partners in the room all have a chance to succeed. But I think there's also this other concept of one-click licensing to new technology providers. So I'm going to just jump on that point, because I think we are adamant about frictionless. It's a very common word up here and around for fans. We got to get there. It's what I want as a music fan. It's what we all want here, and it's what people that are not cognizant of all the different terms that we have to deal with. But I think somewhere down the road, while we're all sleeping, on vacation, working hard, doing something else, we're getting closer and closer to a place where a business partner can plug in to a label of any size and accept a term of service that is very fair and reasonable and values exchange for all, and create, call it what you want. Could be an app, could be almost like a new storefront, basically, and provide a service to fans that helps monetize music. So I think 10 years down from now, we're very much investing in creative music creation, creative visual creation. The tool sets wrapped around that will continually evolve. The barrier for entry to be a creator has gone way down over the last 20 years, let alone those in the business to self-distribute. So I think we've got so much opportunity across all above. I call what was being referred to earlier, I call it a sandbox, right? We've got a rights. If the walls of the sandbox are about rights and distribution and others, it's just going to continually widen. Go play in the sand and kick it around a little bit. Have some fun and actually drive value for everybody within it. I think we're on that path. It's exciting.
Great point. We've run a little bit over, so we're going to go right into Q&A, and it's actually a great segue. We are taking questions from the audience via text message, so I'm going to read the first one, and we'll get some answers. The first question is, has anyone seen evidence that streaming and free access models have changed the behavior of people who have historically been owning through pirating? As YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, and others remove territorial borders, is licensing masters becoming a thing of the past? When I guess those are two different questions. So first question, has anyone seen evidence that streaming and free access models have changed the behavior of people who've been traditionally pirating music? Anyone want to tackle that?
Yeah, I think we have. I think the most immediate example is Spain. Spain has been a record market. It's been totally decimated by piracy, where digital has hardly taken off at all, and yet Spotify, with its free tier, has brought revenues in that simply weren't there before. So yes, I think streaming models are effective battles against piracy. I think it's important that in piracy-riven countries that the free tiers need to be as broad as possible whilst the market develops.
That's right. Stephen, do you have anything to add to that in terms of have you noticed behavior changing from your perspective?
I would agree with Martin. I mean, we have seen evidence in markets that Spotify's been in for a while that if you can provide that convenient experience with ubiquitous access across all your devices, world's music catalog, social connectivity, and I think all the additional benefits that are going to be built on top of that, that you can restore the value of those consumers, and you're going to get people that may not have been paying for music that will pay for the convenience and all the other benefits that come along with that service.
Okay. Next question. As YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, and others remove territorial borders, is licensing masters becoming a thing of the past? Mr. Caldas, you want to speak to that?
No, I mean, I don't think it's becoming a thing of the past. I think what's becoming more and more imperative is the ability to drive that harder and more immediately than we've ever done. I think, you know, the licensing of masters is an essential part of the commercial ecosystem. You know, it's how we identify a repertoire, it's how we get paid, it's how we know what belongs to who. I think we need to get better at doing it. We need to get better at doing it on a global basis. And I think we are. You know, I think that there's increasing movements towards making it easier and better for new services to get into business. And I think the emerging markets are starting to show that. You know, the developments we're seeing in territories like Ireland and Spain and South America show that, you know, as this perception of the value of music to phone companies or to ISPs starts to spread and people start to see that there's a business underpinning that, everyone's going to want to jump on that bandwagon. And the licensing aspect of that is going to be crucial to making sure that when that consumer, as I said earlier, puts their $10 on the table, that they're getting the best product possible.
I think that's the totality of our questions. It's hard to believe we only have 2 questions for these. We have more? Okay, keep them rolling. Okay. Bear with us for one moment.
Amaechi, just back to the licensing question. We license hundreds of masters around the world,
right,
and have an international person in our office just dealing with it all day long. And I think it's still important, even if we have the global access across YouTube and iTunes and et cetera, because we need those local voices talking to radio, video, press, you know, tastemakers in their markets. Right. And it's still crucial.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that as well. Next question. Does anyone have a fear that as we put up inexpensive services to meet the demands of a group of customers not paying us today, we will take money out? Did that make sense?
Yeah.
No?
Makes sense.
Okay. Do you want to address that?
I think the question is, do access models cannibalize other forms of monetization?
Right.
Perhaps.
It's a good take on it.
My answer is short, no.
Okay, great.
I think we're bringing new people in. For the most part, we've seen evidence that it does not, in fact, cannibalize ownership models, whether it be those shiny disc things or a download model. I don't think on the overall that it's cannibalizing our business. It's growing our business.
Okay. And what does an independent artist need to be most concerned about with the rights of a song they think has a potential hit? What does an independent artist need to be most concerned about with the rights of a song that they consider has potential to be a hit? I didn't write the question.
Well, I don't know. Just a very basic answer is if you think it's a hit, you know, you have to find the right situation for yourself and for the song, you know. And, you know, it's a very sort of broad question that it's a little difficult to answer, but
well, I think if they feel that they've created or stumbled upon a song that has huge potential, huge upside, what do they do especially if they don't have the experience?
I would say the more involved they want to be, the better economic deal they're going to get.
Right.
The more they're going to learn, the more they're going to care, the more they're going to. I mean, the difference between bringing a record in that's already on radio and a record that's not. You know what the economic deals would look like from any, you know, music company, you know?
Sure.
2 different deals. So the further they can get with it on their own, the better.
Right. And not sign their publishing away right away. Right. Hold on to that for a little while. Next question. Does the music industry see online video being utilized as a revenue generator in the near future, and to what capacity? This is going to be the last answer because we're about out of time.
I'll jump on that unless someone else. Online video streaming, to me, when I call it the access model, I include video in that. And I do believe that that business is only going to grow for those that create visual content. There's the official music video, there's the day in the life and the behind the scenes and visuals that are partnered up with an artist and a label. There's visuals that artists can create even on their own, even with a label deal, without a label deal. I believe there's a lot of opportunity for monetizing video in many ways. You've proven some of those for yourself. Maybe you want to jump in on this.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we're in the process right now. We have various scripted TV content we're making based around the electronic music lifestyle, with proper guys who've written for CSI and different programs. We've done a lot of long-form concerts recently, like Deadmau5 from the Toronto Sky Dome, Steve Aoki, Little John, Winter Gordon from Roseland, and it's an ongoing kind of series of long-form things. Our band, the Bloody Beetroots, go to Australia and they do shows at the Stereosonic Festival across Australia. So we do 6 viral YouTube clips kind of documenting their experience with the Kangaroos or whatever it is. So it's a constant. We have someone in the office now just creating visual content every day because it's like become real. It's become a real revenue source. It's clearly a driver for promotion and marketing. So we're just kind of flowing with it and growing what I call the media side of music.
I'll just add too quickly, and I love that we're doing a lot of the same and trying to upgrade everything we're doing. But I also think it's part of the triangle between music creators and companies, technology partners, and creatives on the coding side, and the brand equation as well. I mean, having a mix beyond the traditional music creative that we'd normally be trying to monetize. We have to bring a fuller mix to a brand conversation, and this is part of it.
Thank you. We actually have one last question, and this is addressed to everyone. Do music blogs play any role in your marketing strategy? Music blogs.
Yes.
Absolutely. Very much so.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds like a yes.
I'll speak a little more to it. It's publicity is largely turned into digital publicity. Of course, obviously we try to. Our press department works very hard to get features in print, but the publishing industry has suffered many of the same demands of the music industry, and they're not what they once were. And so more and more, our press department is focused on digital. Right. And I'd say at least 50% of their time is focused on blogs and digital publications.
Right. And I would say they definitely do. In my experience, I've seen them impact different artists on different levels pretty in amazing ways. I put out a record a few years ago from this group called Midlake, and we just hired a young guy, a digital guy, and he introduced us to some pretty interesting ways to approach the digital market. This is about 5 or 6 years ago, but he said, when you reach the 100,000 free download, he said, then it's time to push. And he was totally right. And once you can get it out there and get enough people, Rick Rubin once told me that he starts counting record sales at 1,001. Everything up to then is free. That's the way he considers it, because you've got to saturate the market and get people's attention. So we're done. Thank you, panelists. Thank you so much. Some great conversation. And thank you, audience.